experiencing his father's consciousness and whatever was left in Picard after the mind meld. It's a very emotional moment for him, even as a Vulcan. And Picard just kind of smiles, like, because there's that part of him where he's like, these two are finally communicating or at least understanding each other on a level that they couldn't do before. And it's a really sweet scene to close out the episode.
I have to say it is a very nice scene, but I wrote, it looks like when I have sinus pressure, because like the points where he's got his hands on his face are like the same points where I press on my own face to get rid of the sinus pressure, and I also kind of make those faces that Spock did sometimes because it hurts.
So maybe Spock just had sinus pressure.
Yeah. I mean, he could have had a sinus migraine, because let me tell you, those are no joke.
Those are indeed
no joke.
So now we're the end of our episode, but we're at the end also of a two-parter. So I'd like to know what you guys think. Do you think this episode paid off on the setup that we were given in the previous? Do you feel like this was a satisfying end to the storylines that we were given in part one?
I do. I mean, it was kind of a long wind-up with the part one on some things, but plot holes aside, I think it really helped to understand things in this episode and not try to jam it all in one. Like, it might have been better as like an extended episode, so there was less time to notice any plot holes and not as much wind up, but yeah, I think it did a good job.
Cool. How about you, Neil?
I think that this conclusion was wrapped up way too quickly. I think they should have, if they were going to do a two-parter, they should have introduced a lot of the plot elements that happened in the second episode earlier, instead of spending so much time with, say, the Enterprise crew doing their whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
But I do think that the emotional payoff was worth all the lead up. The scene with Data and Spock was great. And then that last scene where Spock finally gets to touch his father's consciousness is, as a Trek fan, super satisfying. As episode watching, if you're not like a big time Trekkie, I can see how it's not that, but as someone who's followed their journey from the 60s to now, it really does pay off in that aspect. I don't think this is the best of the Next Generation, but I do think it's really good, and it's a great send off for not only Leonard Nimoy but Mark Leonard. I think it really does pay a good homage to him as an actor and as a character on the show, and I think it's a really good way for Leonard Nimoy to kind of pay his respects to someone that he had worked with for 60 years at that point? No,
sure.
Not maybe at that point. It was 40 years at that point. But
right.
Yeah, I think it's a well done overall episode. I don't think it's the strongest two-parter, but I think it's a really good Spock episode, and it's a really good Data episode or set of episodes.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that one, Neil. I think emotional payoff 100% there. It really ticks all the boxes of, like, Spock doing the Vulcan neck pinch, and I think, like, you could make the argument like there is some fan service here, but I feel like the fan service is done so well that you don't even notice it. You don't even care that there's fan service, because you're just like, yeah, I want to see Spock do all that stuff because it's Spock, right? I do think the stuff with him and Data is probably the best of the episode. I think the Klingon stuff is great. I think if we're talking like the Klingon stuff is just because they're always just so over the top. They're great. I do think watching the Enterprise crew without Picard solve their mystery, I think that does drag the story down a little bit. but plot-wise, I think the second part definitely does rush through it, and there are plot holes, but I feel like because the emotional payoff is so high, for me, I forgive it, because it's, I just have, it's Spock, and it's Data, and it's Sarek, and it's the last time we see Sarek, and it's just, and then a month later we would all be in the theater watching Undiscovered Country, and then, so it's like, it's totally, the emotional payoff is there, but
there's a lot of member berries.
There is, and I don't mind them here.
No, they're not bad.
They're not. Sometimes the member berries get
They're
too
sweet
much.
member berries.
Yes, and there's just enough of them.
Okay, number one, I've never heard anyone say member berries.
Oh!
Number two, I think it's interesting that you guys have been super, super into Star Trek, and I was just a casual watcher of The Next Generation. Like, I only saw a little bit of the original series when I was younger, and I didn't watch the entirety of the original series until I was married and my ex-husband wanted to watch it. I mean, then husband. And we watched it, and I was just like, okay, there's a thing I've done. I don't know, it's fine. I just love Spock the whole time, and, Bones' lines are funny and all that kind of thing. It wasn't quite for me, I think. But whereas Next Generation wasn't, I haven't really gotten into it until I've been older, and I went back, and I've started rewatching them this way, and then I had watched all of Deep Space Nine before that, because a friend of mine got me turned on to Deep Space Nine, and, so it's kind of funny that I'm like, yeah, I like this, but you guys are actually talking about, you're trying to, like, I don't know, explain why you like it, like, oh, it's just an emotional payoff. I'm like, you know what, I like it, that's fine. I understand there's stuff that's wrong with it. I don't have to say it's because of the emotional payoff, because you know what, it's still a payoff for me.
Nice, that's good to hear.
But and since I still got most of the references. I mean, some things as I was looking up information, I found out more references and things, but yeah, I didn't think it was too bad. Sometimes you get hit over the head with stuff and it can be tiring. So, but yeah, no, I thought it was not too bad. But there's definitely some things in here that are very good Next Generation little flashes in this. Mm-hmm. Not just, I mean, that, like, the scene with Spock and Data is the best, but, like, there's other little things that I just enjoy, because I like watching the show, and I like being able to have, like, a range of emotions, like worried and happy and sad and laughing, like, whatever, I like, those are my favorite episodes when I have, like, a range of emotions watching them. But I'm kind of like that with other things, like Doctor Who. Like, those are my favorite episodes where I have a range of emotion, too. So, I just
cool. Yeah.
kind of went off on a long thing there. I'm sorry.
That's fine. No, I always think it's interesting when we have different perspectives on things, or we approach episodes differently, as maybe somebody who's been a Trek fan for a longer time or a shorter time, or more familiar with certain parts of the franchise. I always think it's interesting just because it makes for interesting conversations. And I think that, I think for sure, like, somebody like for me, where original series was my first exposure to Trek, and I watched it over and over and over again. So to see Spock show up in Next Generation, I have a very strong reaction to it, maybe in a way of somebody who never watched the original series and just only sort of maybe casually aware of who Spock is, or aware enough of him from just absorbing through the Trek fandom. But and that's what's great about it, is you can approach it different ways.
I do remember being a kid and being like, yeah, I know who that is, because I never really thought of myself as, like, I didn't realize the nerd that was inside me until I got a little older. I should have known, as much as I like the original Batman series. I don't know why I could get into that more. Maybe because it is meant to be ridiculous. Because I feel like Star Trek wasn't meant to be ridiculous, but sometimes it was. But maybe...
Well, it was the
if
60s.
I watched it
Everybody
in a different...
was ridiculous.
That's true.
So,
that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
It wasn't trying to be ridiculous, but it embraced it when it happened.
Okay, all right. Maybe I should rewatch it after watching some of these other ones, so I can.
I mean, for sure. Like, what's really interesting about the original series is that the first and second seasons are the strongest, and the third is the weakest. And it's usually the other way around,
right?
Where it's like the first is the weakest, and then they get stronger. But 1 and 2 were stronger, and then you think about too, like. When Star Trek got taken off the air, got canceled, there was a huge campaign by all the fans who wrote letters, like actual letters, by hand with a pen on paper, and sent it
Something
to
people
the studio.
do not do anymore. Yeah,
no one does that because who does that?
Is that when they did the animated series? Was it because of that, or
no? That's why third season was created.
Oh.
They canceled after the second season, and then what was her name? Bijou Trimble, something Trimble.
Yes.
She was in Star Trek: The Motion Picture because of how much they appreciated her efforts to get the third season created. So she's in the big in the motion picture. There's this shot of a whole bunch of like Starfleet officers and cadets and whatnot before they go off on their mission, and a bunch of the people who were big contributors to that writing campaign were in that shot because they just wanted to show, like, the creators wanted to show their appreciation for all the work that they had done.
Aw, that's cool.
Yeah, the fans completely saved Star Trek, and without that, we wouldn't have had season 3, even though it wasn't the strongest, but we wouldn't have had the animated series or any of the movies or anything after that. We wouldn't have had Next Gen or anything else because the fans kept it alive. The fans were creating fanzines, and they were creating Star Trek conventions. They were creating Star Trek conventions before Comic-Cons really caught on.
Yeah,
in
as
the 70s, they
were
doing Star Trek conventions.
Yeah,
and they advertised like in newspapers, like, oh, if you're a Star Trek fan, come to this hotel in New York.
Yeah, I definitely knew that there were more like comic conventions are now, because when like San Diego Comic-Con started, it was just strictly comics.
Right.
But they were doing they were the first people to cosplay and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I'm super excited that Shatner and Takei and Koenig are all going to be at C2E2 this year.
They sure are.
I'm actually thinking about spending some serious money to go meet all of them for the first time.
I mean, honestly, like, just to be completely realistic, I mean, how many more chances will we have?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we should put on our uniforms and see how many people we can get in a photograph legally.
And take pictures.
And so we can split it, because it's going to be expensive.
Yeah. I mean, Shatner alone will probably be expensive, and I don't even know how much we'll have to pay George Takei to be in a picture with Shatner. So I don't know.
Yeah, who knows if that one would
But
happen.
Takei is the one I'm most interested in being like meeting.
Me too. I mean, I've met William Shatner before, and he has a horse farm around here too.
He seems fine, but Takei is the one I'm really interested in meeting.
Yeah, I mean, he is fine. He's all right.
But I mean, just from thinking about it, this is the last year that Nichelle Nichols is doing the rounds.
Is she coming this year?
She is not. This year, 2019. This is the last year she was going to make any appearances. Yeah, she has dementia.
Yeah,
and her family or her caretakers have been saying that basically, I don't think she knows where she is, and I think it's really wrong to wheel her into a place and she doesn't even know where she is with a bunch of that's just terrible. Like, no one should live any part of their life that way. And so she is retiring from public appearances. So I mean, these are the last 3 remaining cast members who are still able to do appearances.
And from what I could tell, she really liked going to those things.
She loved it
because she was at Rebecca's heard this story. She was at a Doctor Who convention I went to. I think you've heard this story, right, Rebecca?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, you had to have, because I always tell everyone. Because I was wearing my Doctor Who cosplay, and it was a flapper dress, and she told me I looked fabulous. Of all
Nice.
people to tell me I look fabulous. Anyway,
I know,
amazing.
that's great.
but that was